All right, it's episode 62 of the Rated RR podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Rish Roshan right here, along with Ziaul Raushan and one of the many young, intelligent footballers we have in the Singapore football circles. You know, we've spoken to so many of them over the course of this podcast, Raushan, haven't we? And we're always impressed by how they have such a different mindset. You know, it's more than just football, isn't it, Raushan, for them?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think in this day and age, it's inevitable that you need to have a bit more about you than you have on the pitch. And lucky for us, the player we have lined up today has both.
Jared Gallagher, as you can see, I didn't need to introduce him because he's there. He's right there if you're watching in and tuning in to us, which I just want to say as well to everyone who's been supporting the channel and subscribing it, and I hope you've been enjoying it. What was really nice is that on occasion, I've had people actually come up to me and say, we tune into the Rated RR podcast. Just the other day, at a car park near my place, somebody shouted out the podcast name. I was carrying my tau hui on the way home with my youtiao, which I sometimes get. And he was like, Rated RR podcast. I was like, yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And we're going to try and keep doing this for as long as we possibly can. And as long as Raushan can stand me.
And also, hopefully, after this podcast, after they listen to the Rated RR podcast, they'll start supporting another podcast because Jared Gallagher will be talking to us about his later on in the show. Jared, it's great to have you with us. We've wanted to have you for a long, long time. We've waited for your schedule to clear up a bit. How are you doing, and how's your end of season break been?
I just first off by saying it's an honor to be on the Rated RR podcast. Trust me, I've been listening since as long as I can remember, and no, it's been really good. Finally having some time off, although. I will say that I'm not the best when it comes to taking a break. You know, I think a few days after the obviously disappointing defeat to Balestier, you know, I was straight back in the gym. You know, I'm not really the type of person to just be able to sit at home and idly just not do anything. So yeah, it's been nice though to have a little bit of a break, sort of just watch the games and sort of catch up with friends and do stuff like that. So, but since like you mentioned, I am in school as well, so. That the exams are coming up, and so that's taking a bit of my focus for now as well.
What are you doing in school? What are you doing in school, Jared? For us that don't know.
I'm in my first semester at NUS, and I'm pursuing a major in communications and new media. So that's the goal. Something in the realm of journalism and like podcasting, and it's a whole mishmash of different things, but something along those lines is what I'm interested in. Yeah.
See, I told you, man. We're one of the many intelligent young footballers we have in Singapore football circles, and we can tell you've been a busy guy. You're not someone who just thinks about stuff on the pitch, thinks about football. Congratulations on your award win, by the way. Story of the year at the FAS Awards night. How good did that feel?
Before talking about how good it felt, like my first initial thought was just being surprised. Like I wasn't the one that submitted the story to begin with. It was Vic. I know you guys might know him from Soccer Khakis. He told me that he was going to submit one of my stories. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, obviously I didn't think anything of it, whether I even have a chance. Then to find out I was even in the top 3 for nomination for the award was already a surprise, because I was literally like right here on my bed having a nap before training, and I woke up and Moose, the head of Mustafa, the head of comms at FAS, called me and said, "Oh, Jared, you've been nominated." So I was like, "Huh?" I was completely surprised and taken away. And then obviously to win it on the night itself against like Deepan and Matthew, 2 established journalists for Straits Times and Channel News Asia respectively, was not crazy. Like I would have never expected it. So no, I mean it's an amazing feeling, and it's a bit of vindication, I guess, for all the stuff that I do off the pitch. You know, it's a good feeling to get some sort of reward, you know?
Yeah, Jared, absolutely. Huge congratulations on winning that award. I think, like you said, it makes you feel good, especially when it comes as a surprise. It almost is wind to your sails, right? Now, talk to me about that article itself, because it was about your time in Cambodia during the AFF Under-23 Championships. How did the idea come to write it? I mean, it's all good going through it, but to pencil your thoughts must have been a thought process that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I enjoy all the content that, you know, the Western side of sports does, you know, be it the NBA, football in the UK, all of. So during the pandemic, a lot of them did film content, you know, specifically with the NBA, you know, in the bubble that they were playing in, or like different footballers filming their travel days and stuff like that. So I really immersed myself in a lot of that content a lot of the time. And so when it came turn for me to have a trip of my own, I thought to myself, okay, this might be a good opportunity to sort of do something cool. And I didn't think I was quite at a stature where I could go around with a phone and vlogging things. I thought like it's a bit intrusive, you know? And I feel like myself, I'm not quite at that level where I can go around and say, okay, I'm going to start filming people. So I thought, and I spoke to Joel actually, who's one of the comms guys at FAS who I'm very, very close with, and he said, "Why don't you do an article then? Since I do enjoy writing, and I had a small blog at the time, so I would just start noting things down day to day. And since we had quite a lot of free time with the COVID protocols and stuff like that, and then once the tournament was over, I sort of just put it together and tried to make something that was interesting to read."
Yeah, you know, Jared, it was you mentioned interesting to read. It was very interesting for me to read as well, especially the bits about. There was a part in the article where I think you were talking about the game against Vietnam, where maybe you made a mistake and in the early stages of the match, and then you were feeling like you just wanted the ground to open up and swallow you, right? And I thought it was fascinating for me to read that, because I've been in those positions myself before, and I think it's something that maybe if you haven't played professional football at a certain level, you don't quite understand how that confidence can really get hit. You might be a very good player, but certain things just don't go your way on the pitch, and then you just feel like, I just want to sort of get off. You don't want the ball. You just try not show yourself for angles. You don't want to receive it in tight spaces. And the more you sort of overthink situations, the worse it becomes. I find that when you're playing naturally, you're playing with confidence, when you don't even think about things, that's when you're at the best. So I think for me, it was so good, this article, to really get that sort of insight into your mentality or a player's mentality and their experiences. And for me, I think that's why it was kind of nice to have you up there with this article, winning that award for me, because we rarely hear from players in those situations telling us about those experiences and how they sort of came through it. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, firstly, thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. But no, absolutely. I think even as players, ourselves, we know how high pressure some of these situations can be. And for me, that was only my third appearance for Singapore, right? Going into that game, obviously we want to win every single game, and the odds were a bit stacked against us. But no, I can remember that exact moment where I lost the ball and they proceeded to score. Like I can remember exact details about it, because it's the sort of thing that doesn't leave you. And like you mentioned, I wanted the ground to swallow up 100%. And you're just looking around like, I don't know where I am, and you don't really want to be there anymore because you feel like it's not going to get better. And when you don't have that confidence as a footballer on the pitch, you won't be able to show what you can do. And I agree with whatever you said about confidence being important, because I think at the end of the day, it comes down to instinct on the pitch. You can't, as much as you train and you do all these things off the pitch, like when you're in that moment, nobody can help you really. It's up to you to show your best and to do your best. And when you lose a lot of your confidence and you just feel like you want the ground to swallow you up, you're not going to be able to do much. So I remember the rest of that game being quite painful to play. I have to be honest. Yeah.
It's all part of the learning journey and all part of growing the experience. I just want to clarify, by the way, that I didn't vote for you because I wasn't a part of that to vote for articles.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't part of the voting committee. Just want to, in case people thought like, oh, Roshan voted for the player of the year and this and that. So
if you had an opportunity to vote on it, I feel like you would have voted for Jared as well, because like you say, you loved it, right?
There was really good insight. I mean, it's different. It's different, and I think as Jared mentioned earlier as well, players these days now you get Players Tribune and they talk about their journeys and stuff like that. I think it really provides this sort of connection between people who don't play the game. Anyway, moving on.
That point of view is not something you often get, right? From a player's perspective almost.
Yeah.
So again, huge congratulations, Jared, on winning that award. Now let's move on with the AFF Under-23 competition that we were talking about. It was part of a hectic calendar for the Young Lions and all the players, including yourself. You also had the SEA Games to play in. What was the experience like of representing Singapore at the SEA Games?
SEA Games specifically was amazing because obviously, having grown up overseas, I wasn't really as in touch with what the SEA Games was and how big of a deal it was. So, I mean, having had a chance to represent Singapore first last year at the AFC Under-23, I sort of got a taste of what it's like to represent Singapore, and that was amazing. But I had a very short cameo, and going into AFF and SEA Games specifically, I wanted to have a bigger role. Obviously, that was the goal. But having SEA Games as like a big thing that everyone in Singapore recognizes, right, regardless of the sport, when you have that title, it's an amazing thing, but also a lot of pressure, obviously. And Singaporeans we love our football, right? So we go there and we want to do our best and we want to qualify and we want to go as far as we can. And having that entire atmosphere in Vietnam and knowing that we have all the support of fans back home, it's just an amazing feeling and something that I'll never be able to forget. Yeah.
We as Singaporeans, we do love our footballers. We should love our own football a lot more. But I guess that's a story for another time, and it's something I have spoken about previously. I won't get your thoughts on it. Don't worry, Jared. Don't want to get you in trouble. But going back to the SEA Games and the AFF Under-23 Championships, was there a sense that Raushan already touched on the fact that it's been a really busy calendar year for you guys in terms of the schedule? Was there a sense that there were lessons learned from the AFF Under-23s that sort of helped you guys in the SEA Games?
I think AFF Under-23 was sort of an extension from the last year's AFC and then going into SEA Games. So it was, obviously we're trying to carry forward ideas, but also we have to look at things like personnel and different commitments that people have, whether people will be able to join us for the respective tournaments. Obviously at SEA Games, we lost two big players, Jacob and Ilhan, through injury. So that was obviously a difficult thing to do. And then we also had the addition of the overage players. So we tried to carry forward, obviously, the ideas under Coach Nasri, but with the difference in like playing styles and players that we had available, obviously it's a little bit different. But no, I think there are definitely a lot of lessons learned. And to me, adversity teaches you more than anything else. So I think I'd like to think that at SEA Games we showed an improved showing from AFF for sure. We're obviously disappointed to not be able to qualify from the group, but I think I'd like to think that we made Singapore proud to an extent. We were fighting to the last game, and we had a good chance of qualifying if we'd been able to hold on against Malaysia.
Yeah, that's certainly a good point you make. Now, you talk about playing in these various competitions, the AFF Under-23 as well as the SEA Games. And then when you compare it to the SPL itself, what do you think the differences are in terms of the levels?
Well, I mean, obviously the SPL is a good level. And I mean, obviously, especially young players, we're still learning and adapting. But I'd say the pace, just the intensity that these other Southeast Asian countries play with is unreal. I'd like to think of myself as like an aggressive pressing player, but when I play against the guys from these other countries, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, etc., it's another level. Like, you have a guy breathing down your neck every single second of the game, and they're relentless for 90 minutes. They're all technically really good players. They're all physically fit. You don't get a break at all in the 90 minutes. If you have a lapse of concentration, that could be the difference between conceding and not conceding, right? So I say the intensity of the game and the pace of the game definitely is the big difference.
How do you think our players can sort of try and elevate themselves to that level?
I think obviously, firstly, I think experience. The more games we play at this sort of level will undoubtedly help us. And I think I'd like to think that I have improved a lot since I've had this exposure. But I think, obviously, physically, firstly, I think there's a lot of emphasis on sports science and gym work and strength and conditioning nowadays. And I think we need to tap into that more. I think people always say that Asian players specifically aren't as big as our European and Western counterparts. And I think that's 100% true, maybe because we don't have that emphasis on it in traditionally. It's not in our culture to focus on that. So I think that's a big thing. And I think something that goes a little bit under the radar as well is sort of like our mentalities and the mental side. Because like I said, even in that Vietnam game, for example, there was a setback, and to deal with that adversity oftentimes happens in a game. If you make a mistake as an individual, you need to be able to have that sort of mental fortitude to recover and say, you know what, doesn't matter. I made a mistake, I'll carry on. And that's sort of what we try to preach to each other as players on the pitch, obviously, but it's tough to do that in the game itself. So I say, obviously, technically and coaching and players being more exposed to higher levels obviously will help. That's a no-brainer. But I think something that goes under the radar is definitely the mental side of the game.
Jared, on that topic of fortitude, you needed plenty of it throughout the 2022 season. We talked about Under-23, we talked about SEA Games, but let's focus on the local league now and the Cup as well. It was a difficult season for Young Lions. I think all of us hand on heart can admit that. Give us some insight into how it felt like going through what was a struggle throughout the year, and not just for you, but amongst your teammates and the dressing room in general.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's clear today that it wasn't the season that we wanted to have. I think, honestly, hand to heart, at the start of the year, I thought we were going to have a good year. I thought with the squad that we had, I thought we had a lot of good players, and would have a chance to really go out there and compete. But obviously, things didn't pan out the way we wanted to for one reason or another. All our players have commitments. Being Young Lions players, all of us have commitments outside the pitch, and everyone knows that. And that doesn't make it any easier, but it's not an excuse either, right? We still owe it to ourselves to go out there and play to our best every single week. And I think what we struggle with the most is consistency, without a doubt. I remember when I was on, I spoke to Joshua before on another podcast or SPL Social, and he said that we played well, and like I think players around the league know that we are capable of doing that, but whether we turn up and we do that every single week is a completely different story, and that's the frustrating bit, I think.
Yeah, it's a consistency and trying to find that as well. I sort of have been in that position before, previously, many years ago, in the early stages of my professional career with Balestier. We were a very young side, but we had foreign players to help us along, and yet we struggled. We finished bottom of the league, and there were lots of moments where you're just losing sort of game after game after game, and it can get really frustrating. It can get really tiring on your sort of your mental state, but because we were such a young team, there's a lot of us who were sort of friends behind the scenes and in the locker room, and I think that sort of helps. Is that kind of what the situation is like with the Young Lions? That there's a pretty good dressing room atmosphere amongst you guys?
Yeah, I mean what you said. Like, I guess it's sort of a good thing about being a young player is that we're sort of naive and I wouldn't say immune to all this noise and stuff that's going on, but we don't really maybe take it in as deep. I mean, I know a lot of guys in the dressing room, like we get along really well, and obviously when the results aren't going well, we have to rely on each other, right, to sort of lean on each other and get through it. And I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes, that I'll turn up to training and guys will be asking me, why are you so, you don't look like you're smiling and stuff like that. And it's often because like, I'd like to think that I'm like I joke around and get along with the guys. But there are definitely times I turn up to training and I'm just frustrated about obviously the run of results or whatever it is. But I also have to take a step back and remind myself, like, it's not going to get better by me being down and out, like we need to come together and work together and be able to smile and laugh once in a while, because if you go full throttle and you're too engrossed in it, I think sometimes you sort of lose your way, and it's not going to get better. That's for sure.
I think it also needs to be added that the Young Lions were robbed of players through injury. Jacob Mahler, any team would miss, their captain would suffer, and then the likes of Ilhan went away to Albirex, Raihan left. So there were various mitigating factors for what panned out to the Young Lions. I think people need to realize that instead of just looking at the table, looking at the numbers and making sweeping statements, right? But speaking of statements, there's always a lot of talk about the Young Lions and what needs to be done for the project to be better. Also, whether it's even a worthwhile project to continue at all. What's your take on it, Jared?
I mean, I think I will always have a soft spot for Young Lions, firstly, from an emotional point of view, because, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to play professional football. It was very far-fetched. And when I came back to Singapore during national service and I had the opportunity to trial and then eventually sign and then this year make my debut, I think it gives myself and a lot of players like me a platform to show ourselves and to go on to have careers potentially. And even if we don't end up having a fruitful career and we don't end up making the national team, it's still a place for players to develop, regardless of, maybe the end result isn't as great as people would like, when maybe we're not challenging for a title, but I guess that's a debate for other people to have. And I think also from a statistical point of view, I look at a lot of players in the national team. A lot of them have come from Young Lions,
Yeah.
I think you look at least this year's iteration of Young Lions, we've had Shah, we've had Raihan, Ilhan, Jacob, Glenn as well, all make the step or at least continue to be in the national team, right? And prior to them, the likes of Haris, Safwan, basically all the big players in the national team. Exactly, stalwarts, and they all had a stint at Young Lions at some point. So I understand the argument for why people would be opposed to the plan of a Young Lions developmental team in the league. But I think if you ask a lot of players, they would credit Young Lions massively with their development and being the players they are today.
I'm just smiling to myself because I think it's very easy to just oppose something without coming up with a solution for what is on the other side of it, right? So if you say, get rid of it, it's terrible, it's horrible, send the players back to their clubs and whatnot. Okay, what do you do about national service, for example? At least the Young Lions project, not perfect, but it gives players an opportunity to still get out there and still play and still get that experience of professional football.
Definitely.
And Jared, as you've pointed out, the guys in the national team, the likes of Haris and so on, players who have come through the Young Lions project, and it's also a way in terms of helping your development, right, Garrett? I mean, Jared, you touched on the fact that it's been difficult for you this season. You've had your challenges, the whole team has had. How has that sort of helped you in your own personal development?
I think I mentioned earlier on, like, adversity teaches you more than anything else, and I think that's something I really tried to hold with me. And every single time we have a setback, every single time I have those moments where I don't want to smile and I'm just down and I'm out because of the game, I come back to myself and I sort of think about it. Well, okay, am I gonna look back in 2 years and be happier because of this? Maybe, like all these moments and lessons that I'll take from struggling every week and losing to an extent, that's going to teach me a lot. And it's also going to teach me to cherish winning even more. I see a lot of people talk about how is this going to affect like a young player's winning mentality. I feel like, to me, I want to win more than ever. Obviously it's frustrating to go out there and lose. So even when we do win, like I remember the Tanjong Pagar game specifically, like Zico's had an amazing game, scored 4 goals. We won. He has a great team performance. Like I made a mistake to give them one of the goals. Like I made a bad pass back and Rio scored, but I learned from that. But on a bigger picture, I was so happy for Zico's first day because he got the 4 goals that he deserved, and he'd been robbed of probably. Like he had a few chances to score, but it's just a good feeling when we do win, and I think it makes you cherish it more as well, because you can't let the bad moments keep you down, and you have to appreciate the good ones as well.
100%, Jared. I completely agree with you. I want to go off script slightly and talk about adversity, right? Because earlier you mentioned possibly never playing professional football, yet here you are playing professional football. I've heard fleetingly about that journey, but just maybe you can give us some context about that adversity you went through to make yourself the professional footballer you are now.
Yeah, I guess I just, obviously everybody dreams of being a professional footballer, but I'd say I reached a certain age where I never thought it would happen. So I was still playing football competitively because that was something I enjoyed regardless. I was just enjoying the process. I never thought about what an end goal would be. It's just I'll play competitively as long as I can and just enjoy it. And obviously I was looking at what I would study at university. Things like journalism and stuff interested me. So my plan after national service was to just go potentially overseas and study and just sort of go down a normal route, I would say. Then the opportunity came about where I was like, I want to test myself against all the guys in Singapore. I've played a majority of my footballing journey overseas. So now that I'm back in Singapore, why not try it out? I know that I've worked really hard in the past and trained really hard, and I continue to do so. So give it a shot. I'd rather regret something that I did than something I didn't do.
Yeah. I bet you're glad you gave it a shot. Things are going well for you at the moment, and hopefully they keep going on the up. But speaking of those adversities and things like that, I just wanted to go back to your article quickly here as well, because you kind of mentioned, after a bad result, you go on social media and you see the comments that are written about you, about the team. It can be a really toxic environment at times. Like I said, it's easy to just shoot someone down on social media. How does that sort of affect you, and how do you try and overcome that?
I mean, I think all of us have to understand that that's just part of the world, like freedom of speech and social media go hand in hand. We can't censor exactly what people say all the time. And a lot of times people are going to say things that we don't like. I'm sure Messi and Ronaldo and all the greatest players in the world have plenty of things that they don't like to hear about themselves. Yeah. Ronaldo, especially recently. But that's just the way it is. And obviously some of it is probably constructive and you can take it on board. But I mean, to me, I like to lean on the people that are closest to me, family and friends. And if they say something, I'll listen, because they know me, then they know my life, right? Whereas if it's somebody commenting, the likelihood is they don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. Like you said, a lot of times footballers, we have things going on that other people don't know. And so I guess I respect their opinion, but to me, it's not something that I try and let affect me too much.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you mentioned that support system of listening into the people who love you and the people who know you. And that's something I live by as well. I know some people get motivated by shutting up the haters and things like that. I mean, I'd rather play for the people who love me and who want the best from me. And you have to be careful with the kind of feedback you sort of take in.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to understand where it's coming from and from whom it's coming from. So, I mean, it's great to hear that. That's sort of your line of thinking as well. And also, I just wanted to say, you mentioned freedom of speech there. Yeah, free speech, freedom of speech doesn't mean you go on and be a dick. That's not what freedom of speech is. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, but some people obviously don't think that way. Some people obviously don't think that way. So that's the reality. We can't control what they say. All we can do is just try and block it out, I guess. Your opinion respectfully doesn't matter to me. Yeah.
Very good.
Exactly. I think you need to set a clear line and just accept what you want to and not accept what you don't, right? Moving on from that, you talk about this criticism that might be prevalent online and you coping with it with your support network. In a dressing room sense, do you guys discuss it at all?
I mean, yeah, obviously, all of us are, especially being the young players that we are, we're all on social media. We're all on our phones and stuff like that. We see a lot of the stuff. So I think being young, we can brush it off a little bit. Obviously, there's specifically about Young Lions. I guess most of the stuff is negative, right? Like people making fun of us, poking fun of us. I know there's things like TikTok FC, people call us, and all this sort of all these just outdated comments and stuff like that. So I mean, we try and laugh about it, of course, and sometimes obviously it is annoying. Sometimes it is annoying without a doubt. Like I can't lie, but at the end of the day, like we said, these people really don't know what's going on most of the time, and within our group, we just keep together and we just keep going, regardless of whatever outside noise there is. We know what we're doing, we know what we're capable of. It's just up to us to show them, and I guess to an extent shut them up, right? I guess to an extent,
yeah. I mean, I'm no stranger to getting comments about myself as well. Players get annoyed with sometimes with my commentary and stuff, right? But they don't understand that people are online hammering us as well. So we're on that side. We're on that side as well. I mean, listen, say what you want. Like you said, it's a free world. But your comments don't mean anything. I think it comes with just move on with it. It comes with the territory.
Exactly, it comes with the territory of putting yourself in the public sphere, right? You got to suck it up slightly, I guess. You take
the good with the bad, right?
It's like the bad, for example. When I've commented like roasting me for my attempt at a mullet. Yeah, that was a reality check for me. I quickly got a haircut after that.
Did you take that
was the final push. I took it as constructive. It was the final push I needed to. You know what? Maybe the mullet isn't working out for me. Let's go back to a little short haircut. Yeah.
I hope you took it in the right spirit. I didn't mean that as a. It was just a bit of banter. I hope I wasn't the only one to point it out. By the way.
No, I might have been the last straw. You were the last straw. It was the last straw. I can't do this anymore.
Jared, I'll give you 5 seconds to say anything you want about Rosh now, and he'll take it.
Take 2 minutes if you need to.
I will say, when I met you the other day at the awards night, you were a lot taller than I expected. Because obviously, I only see your face on the radar, or I only hear your voice. So when I saw you, I was just like, oh wow, okay.
That's how tall I am.
It's not that kind of a podcast. Sit down. All right, Jared. As you can see, we're having lots of fun. One other thing that you did this year that might have been quite fun was interning at FAS, the Football Association of Singapore. Tell us about that. How did that come about and what did you learn?
Yeah, so basically I finished NS late April and we just had SEA Games, and it was obviously SEA Games was up and down, emotional roller coaster. And when I came back, Mustafa, the head of comms, and Joel, they were speaking to me about whether I would potentially want to do a little internship at the FAS. And I was very open to it because, between that time and when university would be starting, I'd kind of have a low period. And I don't know, I just think I'm the type of person that can't really sit still. I think I'm really bad in that way, but it's also, I guess, it's a good thing. So I had a nice 2-month internship there. I learned a lot, and I think it was really beneficial for me to be there and to see the ins and outs of the FAS, get to know a lot of the staff, etc., and to see how they operate on a day-to-day basis. Because I think as players, we don't ever get to see that side, right? We don't get to see all the hard work that gets put into giving us a platform to go out and play and to do all the different things that we do. So, no, it was really insightful. And, no, I learned a lot from the people there. And, I've made friends that hopefully they'll be my friends for a long time to come, yeah.
I bet it was brilliant. It must have been such an eye-opening thing, right? To actually get to see the kind of work that these people do behind the scenes that sometimes doesn't get appreciated, things that they get hammered for without any knowledge, perhaps, of what is actually going on behind the scenes. So it must have been brilliant for you to get that first-hand experience.
No, I mean, like, there's this one guy using a marketing department. I know he was working during his own wedding during last year's AFC Under-23. So I was playing. And the guy that obviously now I shared the same office with him for 2 months. He was working on his own wedding day to make sure that everything was going smoothly so the tournament could be put on.
Yeah.
So just example stuff like that was just ridiculous to hear. I was like, wow, all this is going on while I only have to think about preparing for my game in the evening, right? That to me is crazy. And all the different events that they're responsible for, SPL, Singapore Cup, then there's the national team side, all the different age groups, etc. There's just so many things that are going on in that office. So no, it was crazy to see up close and personal, yeah.
Fantastic. That's really puts things into perspective, right? In terms of how big the job that is at hand. Now, speaking of which, what else you have been up to apart from the internship? You also launched your own podcast recently. Why don't you go out and give us a plug? Where can we listen to it? And what's in the pipeline? Who's coming up?
A cheeky little plug. Thank you very much. So again, like me not being able to sit still, being busy, there was a period where, you know what, I like writing and I want to sort of venture it out into, I guess, a different sort of format of being able to tell stories and stuff like that. So I thought, you know what, I love listening to podcasts such as the Rated RR podcast. And, I send it back to you guys. Plug you while I'm plugging myself. So no, for me it was the perfect way to sort of like, you know, join the two together. And then the Stuck In podcast came up. You know, some good friends sort of like, we came together and I was like, guys, what do you think about these names? And they say, how about Stuck In? Yeah, that sounds good. You know, that's a bit of me.
I was going to say that.
So, yeah. So I've managed to get on like a few interesting guests, and I think hopefully going forward we'll have a few more interesting players. Hopefully guys like, you know, I'm close with Jordan, Imaviwe, Jacob Mahler, Johan Fandi as well. All these sort of like young players, I think, with really interesting stories. And I think that's something, again, like me not being able to sit still, just something to do, and again to give up players insight. I think, you know, it's another good way of you know, sort of taking inspiration from like Ben Foster and guys like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. You know, you're a current player, you got lots to add. And
Exactly.
now that you mentioned your potential guest list, we're going to try and steal a couple of players.
I was just comparing notes.
Now this week's my finals week, so I can't even get to them. You guys might get the first step.
I'm free at 4:00, Rosh. If I can get Jordan.
Let's get Jordan on the chat next. No, but let's leave Jordan to Jared. I'm sure we'll be able to get more out of him with the relationship that they have. I'm very fascinated to hear Jordan's story as well, because I think he's been brilliant this year. He's been very good, and I think if he continues his development, he could be such a good player for Singapore football.
Player, centre back, striker, who knows? You don't know what position he'll be in.
A variety is the spice of life, I believe they say.
I don't know if you know of maybe this is like way before your time, Dion Dublin, who's played in central defence and played as a striker up front. So we've had a few of those players. I think Doherty is another who played for Spurs and Norwich, if I'm not mistaken.
I think even Kim Shin Wook, because I know Jordan Kim Shin Wook. Kim Shin Wook used to be a centre half as well. So
yes,
so I think Kim Shin Wook and Jordan have sort of like a telepathic. They can't speak at all to each other, but when they're on the pitch, they just have that mutual respect. I think.
Jared, now we've talked about how you've been keeping yourself busy, being unable to sit still, right? Internship, school, podcast, football. Is this all part of a bigger plan to, you know, equip yourself with many different skills so you're secured outside of football?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of pragmatism. Like my parents are a little bit more traditional. You know, they obviously encourage the football, but at the same time, you know, degree comes first. That's very important to them, and it is very important to me as well. So besides obviously the studying, you know, learning different skills, be it through the podcast or be it through things that I write, and I don't know, I just meeting different people and stuff like that. It's definitely teaching me a lot, things I wouldn't have learned otherwise, I think. So yeah, hopefully, you know, when the time comes time to hang up the boots and look to other things. Yeah, I'd like to think I have plenty of time, hopefully, but no, maybe something down to like the realm of presenting or like things like commentary. Like I don't know what the future holds in store, but hopefully something along those lines. I think I would be quite interested in stuff like that.
Basically, what Jared is saying is, you get my guest list, I get your jobs. That's what he's saying. Yeah.
Hey, listen,
it's a fair trade.
It's a fair trade.
No,
listen, I think it's brilliant, and it's good that you're sort of planning ahead as well. And these are things that you want to do down the line. I know there is like a shortage of
100%
players coming up and, you know, going into these commentary positions and adding value and things like that, and able to do it on a platform, on a broadcast platform. So concentrate on the football first, and then we'll see what happens. Hopefully you have a very nice long career. And also doing your degree while playing, that's one of the best things, isn't it? I mean, that's just a really good use of your time, of your spare time.
Yeah. I think all footballers talk about it, right? There's a lot of time in the day that you have to just sit around. And obviously, recovery is super important. It's not just the 2 hours of training; it's the gym work, etc., the recovery, the sleep, the rest. But I think, like I said, I'm a person that can't sit still. So having university work and having this, although it is a pain a lot of the time to have to sit down and write essays and do reports. It is something that to sort of stimulate the brain and to get me going in another sense. So no, it's definitely very important. But the sooner the better. I think that it comes to an end. I can't lie.
Didn't you just say
okay,
you
forget the
just got started?
studies.
Yeah, it's semester
Just got
one. It's not
started
even,
and can't wait
yeah,
for it to end.
exactly.
Man, the thing I used to hate about assignments was that those bloody things where you've got to what is it called? I forgot now. You gotta like put those things in brackets. You gotta credit with
Citations.
Yeah,
Citations.
Yeah.
Man, those things
No.
were really annoying. And then there's all kinds of different styles to it. I used to hate doing essays. I
Hey,
was doing my
we're
degree.
supposed to say it's good to get your degree, guys. We need to sell
It
it
is
a
good.
bit better
It
here.
is good.
Stay in
It is
school,
one
kids.
of
Stay
the
in
things.
school.
Stay in school. Go
Stay
get
in
yourself.
school,
You know.
rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. Stay in school. Enjoy yourselves. And listen, forget about that for a while. I just want to ask you, Jared, what are your goals in terms of your football career? Are you comfortable to state them publicly? If so,
Of course.
tell us about them.
I think if I put my goals out there, I'll be responsible for making sure they come true. But no, I think you have to be a goal oriented person in football. Otherwise, you'll be too happy being stagnant, right? For me, I would just want to play to the highest level possible. Be that Southeast Asia, be that greater Asia, be that Australia. Even the A League is something that's really enticing to me. Europe as well. I have my dad being Irish. I have big heartstrings over there. Like I'd love to play there one day. And in terms of short term, I'd say continue to hopefully establish myself in the SPL. Like I said, it's still year one. I have a long way to go before I can hopefully be a national team player as well. But just for now, I guess next year, it's a big year for the under-23s. We have a few tournaments lined up, including another edition of the SEA Games. So my focus is just making sure I'm in the best position to be ready for that and to go out there and compete and give a good account of myself and of Singapore as a whole. Yeah.
Jared, before we let you go, I don't know if Raushan has anything else, but just something on a light-hearted note. Well, do you have a favorite local club? Is that putting you under the spotlight a bit? If you don't, it's okay.
I'll be perfectly honest. I did not watch any local football when I was growing up. I remember only the 2012 Suzuki Cup because I happened to be back in Singapore and I remember winning and we were like, oh my god, it's so amazing. And funnily enough, like Izwan was part of that team, Zofami as well. And I remember when I first came to WIO, they were training with the team to keep fitness, and I was like, wait, I recognize you from my TV like 8 years ago.
a bit like when you saw Roshan at awards night as well.
Yeah,
I recognize you from my TV.
No, with that, he wasn't in awe or anything. He was just like, whoa, you're way taller than I thought. You're a freaky tall man.
But I guess I live close enough to, like, I live in Bukit Gombak, so I know Gombak United used to be a team, so I'll say Gombak United. I'll throw it out there, not even a current SPL club, but no, I say Young Lions.
You live in Gombak, huh? You live in Bukit Gombak. You've given our viewers too much, but do you need a passport to get back there, or?
It's a far journey, and you keep in account when I was in NS and now with school as well, west to east. Yeah, no, the passport is busy. The passport has a lot of stamps on it. I'll say that.
Hey, I used to live around that area. I used to live at Bukit Batok many years ago, eons ago.
Poor you.
Okay, so wait, Raushan, wait. World Cup coming up, man. I gotta find out who.
I mean, we all know he's coming home. I don't know why you're wasting time. No, I'm
no,
kidding.
Jared, no, he can't.
Never,
he can't support England. He can't.
I can't. I simply can't. No.
He already said his dad is Irish, so he can't support England. So and Ireland are not.
Argentina. I'm saying he supports Argentina.
Who are you gonna go with? Who have you got?
I'm a Brazil fanboy. I have to admit, just something about the football they play. Like, I'm not necessarily a Brazilian type of player, but I'd like to think that the style of football that they play hopefully finally translates to a World Cup. Seeing guys like Neymar, Paqueta, just the freedom that they play with Anthony. Like, I think it's such a beautiful thing, and I don't know. I've been rooting for them for as long as I can remember. So hopefully this year they bring it home.
Hey, as long as you're more Casemiro or Fabinho than Fred, I think you'll be all right, man.
Yeah, hopefully I am. Yeah.
And are you a Liverpool fan by any chance?
No, I'm sadly a Chelsea fan.
Oh, okay. We can end the show now.
Let's stop. I don't want to talk anymore.
Rosh, you put Jared under the spot to tell us who he's rooting for at the World Cup. Who are you rooting for at the World Cup?
Oh, I'm Brazil as well. I mean, listen, I'm torn, right? I'm in such a difficult situation because I think Messi is like the best player, footballer ever, and I really want him to finish with a World Cup at the end of his career. But I mean, I just Brazil from a young age. The Ronaldo, the Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, those players. So they've got my heart, Brazil, and I would love for one day Singapore to be there, because there's a different feels, right? Supporting your own country.
Yeah,
I'm quite jealous of other Asian
hopefully
fans.
I'll be representing Singapore when it comes, if I'm still, if I'm still kicking about.
Amen. Hopefully that comes along. All right, guys. Final question. I promise 1 word answer only before I wrap up the podcast. Okay? Hougang or Tampines?
Tampines.
Rosh?
Hougang? I can't. I'm doing the game, so I can't. Sorry. I'm a neutral. I'm a neutral observer. I just want a good game of football and may the best team win.
I don't know why I said that. Now that I think about it, I think Hougang will win. I don't know. I will see. It'll be a good game.
Jared, these are the things you need to learn when you get into the commentary world, man.
All part of the process. All right, listeners, I hope you enjoyed that podcast, because Roshan and I absolutely enjoyed being in conversation with Jared Gallagher. Do support Jared's pod. Do look out for his articles, and do wish him all the best for the long career that he's going to have ahead of him. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode.